Hi everyone, thanks for joining our live stream. This is the second part of our app automation build series. In the first episode, you would have seen that we used Qlik application automation to generate some QVDs from a couple of data sources, specifically Google Sheets, and also from an open API called Alpha Vantage. And we were looking at how we could use that data to potentially create a Qlik app that would help us with tax loss harvesting. So seeing what the performance of our shares would be over an entire portfolio. It's myself, Adam Cooke, who's one of the product designers at Qlik, and Emile, who's one of our solution architects. And we're going to be going through the second session and kind of building on top of what we did last time and building 3 new automations to really supplement a normal Qlik app. So I'll just walk you through the Qlik app that we have right now, and hopefully that will give you an idea of that there's nothing special about this app. This could be an app you've already built in your own workplace or in your own time. And we're going to use that as the basis to create these automations and really add more value to the overall solution. So let's jump into that. So here's the Qlik app. As you can see, we've just got some standard Qlik app with a couple of sheets inside it, or one sheet and then some private sheets. And it's analyzing across different shares what the GBP return value is. So this Qlik app has some dimensions, has some measures. We've got them all listed and ready to go inside the application. I'm not going to go into too much detail of how that was actually built, but you can see here we've got a list of measures already predefined, and we've got a few charts that we've been playing around with, just doing some simple analysis in the first phase of our development here. So if you've built a lot of Qlik apps, you're probably familiar being at this stage. Now we've got this app. We've loaded the data QVDs we generated in the last session. So if you have a look in the data load editor, you can see we're just pulling in a stocks QVD that we created in the last session from our live streaming automations space, which is an important point. And then we're pulling in the trades data as well. So all this data coming into this app is from QVDs, but before that we did an automation that pulls it from those separate data sources, as I said. Finally, something that we're going to do is generate a PDF report. And to do that, we've actually got another sheet that's inside of the app, the application, that's been custom built just for the purpose for a PDF report. So we've taken out all the animated, with all the list boxes and buttons and anything that's interactive, because it's going to be a PDF report. We're not going to see that stuff. So in this one, we're going to just have that as a static PDF that will send it in an email. Cool. So Emile, I don't know if I can pass it over to you, and we can look to do the first automation, which is to pull in the GBP USD exchange rate.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. All right, so before I start working on the automation, let me quickly go to the variables we'll be editing in this automation. The currency exchange rates. So for now, we have here 2 variables, GBP to USD and USD to GBP. And it's these that we want to update also through an automation. All right. So I will create a new automation. Now, yeah, last time in the session, we went a bit slower because it was the first time we went over automations. So yeah, this time we won't explain everything again. If you have some questions, feel free to raise a comment. And of course, we'll make the previous video, it's available on YouTube to review it. All right, Last time we used Alpha Vantage as the source for our stock data, and this time we will be using it again to get the exchange rates. Here is the Alpha Vantage API documentation. They're still not a sponsor, but this is the endpoint we'll be using today to get the currency exchange rates. Now, since last time we didn't add an Alpha Vantage connector to automations, so we still have to use the call URL block, which we can use to just make plain API calls to any URL we specify here. So we want to do it to the Alpha Vantage API. We're making a GET request, and then as per parameters, I could specify them one by one, but I've prepared this, and I can just, by toggling the raw input mode, specify a JSON object of key values that I want to send to the API. Here again, we are using the currency exchange rate function, and the first call is from USD to GBP. All right, let's just run this to see what data we're working with. Here we get the output of the call URL block, and we get the JSON object back that then contains here the exchange rate USD to GBP. So we want to send this to the variable in our Qlik Sense app. To do that, we need to block update variable from the Qlik Cloud Services connector, like this. Let's search for our app. Let's search for the variable.
So I'd already created this variable as a static variable inside of the Qlik Sense app, right? It's probably, there is a best practice. It might be to do that. Make sure your numbers are correct as you expect before you make the Qlik variables dynamic through an automation. Otherwise, it could get quite confusing.
Yeah, indeed, that's a best practice to create them in Qlik Sense and not through the automation. All right. So let me map here the exchange rate as the definition for the variable. And if we now execute this automation again, we should see an error. Let's see here. So we have an invalid JSON pod, and this is a JSON pod that's invalid. So that's the one we used inside the update variable block. And I see here, so the exchange rate, the key name contains a dot here. And yeah, dot in JSON pods, it's a reserved character. We use it to separate the layers or the levels of the JSON pod. We have the block name called URL, and then the object name, and then the object key. So yeah, we can't use this as a key, the dot. Luckily, there's a workaround. So we need to edit this JSON pod. Again, we can here toggle the formula parsing. I think we did that exhaustively in the last call or the last session. So here, so this key, we can change it to be with square brackets and double quotes. Like we'd specify an array key, and you leave the dot here. And if you now run this again, hopefully the error is, here we go, the error is no longer there. And if you take a look at the update variable blocks output, you see here that the variable was updated. All right, great. Let's take a look inside Qlik Sense. Oh, yeah. And here, of course, the variable is not updated. If you've seen the last session, you might already guess what could cause this. It's because automations is using a different session than the Qlik Sense UI. And an update variable block, that's one of the blocks inside automations that makes edits to Qlik Sense apps in sessions. The idea is that automations is using a different session than the UI, because if you start making selections in automations, of course, you don't want those to be also applied inside of the UI, because that would be hard for other people who want to work in the same app. So now we need to find a way, there is a way to still push these changes from your automation towards other sessions. And if you're wondering which blocks use the engine, it will always be in the description of the block. that you can use the save app block to push changes of that block to other sessions. And here is an article if you're more interested. Go ahead and give that a go. So we'll add the save app block, configure it for our stock analysis app. There we go. And if we execute the automation again now, looks good. And here we see the variable was updated. All right. Now we also want to set the other variable. Now I'm not going to drag all these blocks again. So I'll just right click the first one and then copy block with attached blocks, which will copy all from starting from the block I clicked on until all the others to my clipboard. And then I can paste them in this automation or in another automation. Of course, here we have to change a bit of the configuration. So the from currency will now be GBP and the to currency USD. But otherwise, nothing changes. And in here, pasting blocks, then when you paste blocks, the automation editor, it's smart enough to also update the links between the JSON pods between those blocks. There's one more thing here. We have two save app blocks that are doing the save app function for the same app, and that's a restriction in automations. It's not possible to use it for the same app multiple times in the same automation. You can only use this block once per automation run per app. Otherwise, only the first execution will be taken into account. And it's like taking all the engine changes, and then after you've made them, you push them to other sessions. Right, this looks good.
It's probably worth mentioning, right, that the variable that we're updating here is a Qlik variable inside of a Qlik app.
Yeah.
But there
Yeah.
are also variables inside of automation, and they're actually they're completely separate things, even though they're both called variables. So if you come across some of the documentation, it's important to just recognize when we're discussing when we're talking about using an automation variable versus updating a Qlik variable.
Yeah, that's a good point. They are totally unrelated. This, for example, is a block to create an automation variable or to work with it. And then through here, you can create variables of different types, but there's no correlation or no relation with the Qlik Sense app variables. These are only scoped to the automation. All right. Oh, one thing I forgot, was to change the variable ID we're updating.
So because I suppose the reason that we're updating these two variables, right, is we need the exchange rate is changing all the time.
Yeah.
We want our dashboard to have the latest correct exchange number, so that we're reporting in GBP, but the actual data set is in USD. So we want to multiply by the exchange rate. And we don't want to have to reload the app every single time just to change the variable. So we're going to use the automation to do it much more frequently than having to reload the whole application. So if you had an app that had a large data set where you just were trying to update one variable value with something like an exchange rate or some other variable that you're getting from an API, maybe like the weather, temperature or something, then this could save you a lot of resource in terms of reload activity when you click Sense apps.
Yeah, true. So if you want to do this multiple times a day or multiple times a few minutes, we can set the run mode of the automation to scheduled. You do it by configuring the run mode parameter in the start block, and we can say we're starting today. We are the 13th. I want to execute this every 5 minutes or whatever fits your use case, and then you can schedule the automation. And from now on, if I save it, this will be executed every 5 minutes, and the variables will be updated every 5 minutes without doing reloads, as Adam said. All right, so that concludes it for the first automation. So now we have all our stock data is inside the app, really cool, and we have also updated exchange rates. But now, of course, if this would be my stock portfolio, yeah, I wouldn't want to need to go inside this app every time I want to get an update to manually make sure that nothing happened. So in the next automation, we will be setting up some price alerts to verify if certain stock's price made a big jump, or our position for a certain stock made a big jump in the past 24 hours. And for that, we have created a master item, a measure. It's called a return percentage today. And this will keep track of, for every stock, it will keep track of how much our position has changed in the past 24 hours. So
Yeah,
we will
so
be validating that in an automation.
practically that's just using a bit of set analysis inside of a normal measure, right? To get the latest date for a particular share price. So in the automation, we're going to have to make a selection on a specific stock before we can use the measure.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed. This measure, it's calculating it for one stock at a time. Or yeah, we want to validate it at least for one. So here it's globally, but we want to, you can see it if you apply a selection in the UI. So across the whole portfolio, it's minus 15%. But if we select one stock, for example, Tesla, we want to compare this stock by stock and then send alerts for each individual stock, whether or not it reached a certain threshold. Right, so as Adam said, first we need to apply the selection to the stock we want to use.
Should we use Tesla?
Yeah, let's use Tesla. It's a positive one. Let's not dive into the losses too much. So here, the SLA, it's a ticker for Tesla. And first we're applying the selection. As I said earlier, the sessions, this selection, it's only applied in the session of the automation when we run the automation. So this will have no effect outside of this automation. And then we use the block get measure value. Here on the app, again, same app. And then our measure I've shown was return percentage today. And let's just execute this to see what we get. It's also good if you're working with automations, do not build first one big automation and then run it and see if it works, but try to get a few runs in while you're building. It will save you a lot of headaches. All right, here we go. So we get here 19% risen for the Tesla stock. All right. So now inside this automation, we want to validate this measure or the value of this measure. And for that, we can use a condition block, which is like an if statement. So here we say if the output of get measure, and we want to take the happy pot in account, if it's more than 15%, of course, feel free to build an automation that listens to stock losses or position losses. But if a certain stock here has risen more than 15%, then we want to take some action. For example, I want to send an alert to Slack, to my own channel. And here we could say Tesla price has risen by, and then here we would get the percentage in, right? Now, of course, this is not a percentage, it's just a decimal. So let's apply a few formulas to create it a nice looking percentage. First, we want to multiply it by 100. And what you're seeing here is a formula picker. It contains a lot of formulas or functions you can use to do small modifications on data or on strings. It's really powerful, but it's unrelated to expressions in Qlik. This is also something that's scoped to automations only. And inside our help page, there's a big overview of all the available formulas and how you can use them. And one cool thing here is that you can stack them on top of each other. So first we did the multiplication, and now we wanna round this, of course, to two decimals. And for this, we need a round formula. We spend a lot of time naming these.
It's important not to use that for data transformation type activities.
Yeah,
It's more just for formatting of strings.
yeah. If you want to change one small value somewhere, these are really helpful. But if you want to make a transformation on a big data set, yeah, you might run into some limitations. One of those limitations being, you've all seen I've just applied two formulas, but here in the UI you only see one. Of course, you can click it and you can choose edit formula, and then you can like dive into your stack of formulas. But of course, that's not really, yeah, it's hard. What you could do is toggle the formula portion, and then you can see which formulas are applied. So then it's easy to see, but a bit harder to make changes. All right. So let's now execute this again, and hopefully I get a message in Slack. See, it came true at least. And if I take a look here in Slack, share it immediately. There we go. I just received this message that the stock has risen by 19%. Great. Now, of course, just this one message, it's not really informative. And maybe it will be also cool to let me know what exactly caused this price hike. Well, I can't look into, well, there's no way of knowing what exactly happened, but we could make this message a little bit more informative. And to do that, we're going to use, it's already here, the stock news API to include a few news articles of the stock that has the sudden rise or sudden fall if you configure the condition differently. And of course, there's also no connector for the stock news API. So again, we will be using the call URL block. And we're doing it right before we're sending the message. And I've configured that beforehand as well. Again, a GET request. And then as for the parameters, see, in the items, let's not return 10, let's just pick 3. Let's, let's just execute the automation until here. If we do a test run, then the send message block won't be executed. And I'm not spamming my Slack channel. Here we go. The stock news API returns an array of 3 items, of 3 news articles. And I think now it would be cool to get these URLs inside Slack. So we want to loop over this data object of this array, data array. And then inside the loop, we will be sending messages to Slack. There's a duplicate block. And then in here, the text will just send the URL, and Slack should be smart enough to configure it. Yeah, now one annoying thing here, you see I'm mapping the loop to the text of the send message block, but yeah, the loop block wasn't executed yet, so I don't have any history here. Now I could do a new execution, but actually the stock news API is a bit less free than the other API we're using. So I don't want to do too many API calls. So what I can do here, I can just look at the output. It's not too difficult. And I see here that the key name of every item in the data array is news underscore URL. So I could say, so this will be looping over, over this data array. And then inside here, I can map an item from the loop, but I can't map the key. In news URL, the key isn't here. So I can just create a mapping and then again toggle the formula portion and then manually add the news URL key to the JSON pod. Of course, this is very error prone. So only do it if you really know what you're doing. Even though, having said that, I really hope it comes true. And maybe it makes also more sense if we first make the announcement about Tesla before sending the articles. All right, let's execute the automation again. So 3 messages were sent. And if I take a look here, I see I actually got the articles in, and Tesla is Slack is nice enough to give us a preview of what's happening. All right. Now this approach, of course, only works for, or now it's only working for Tesla. We hard coded the stock we're listening to, and in a real scenario, you want to do this for every stock you have here in your portfolio individually. So what we can do then is we want to execute this for every stock we have. So the first step is to list every stock we have. So the block is called, I think, list values of fields, and this will return all the unique values of a certain field. So again, stock analysis app. And we want to list all the symbols. And then here we will execute this inside the loop. So we're just taking the Q text value of the field to apply the selection. And then we also here need to update our description like this. So here, sometimes if you're concatenating these JSON pods together with strings, I find it sometimes hard to know where a space is exactly. And then I find that it helps to, again, toggle the formula parsing. And then here you can see where you actually have spaces and where you don't have them. Because this, is it a space? Isn't not a space, can be hard to see. All right, then one more thing we want to do is in the call URL block, update the ticker to reflect the current stock symbol. Again, the Q text value. All right. Yeah, actually, I won't be. No, I think I have a few tokens left in my subscription for Stock News API. Let's execute this. And yeah, messages are coming in. All right, so it looks like I had 9 stocks that had a higher return than 15%. And if I look inside my Slack channel, that's actually checking out a lot of Facebook, Zoom, of course, yeah, and so on.
Got a lot of reading to do then.
Yeah, I know how to do it. All right. So now that's it for the alerting. But one more question you might have is, when do you execute this? Of course, I don't want to do it manually because that kind of defeats the purpose of monitoring your portfolio. I think a good place to start is to execute this every time you have a new reload inside your application. Your Qlik Sense app, every time it was reloaded. So we can here add a webhook event that listens to the Qlik connector and then listens to the event app reload finished. And now this will be executed every time a reload happens in our tenant. So we want to filter it to one specific app. So here we can then specify the app ID, quickly stealing it from here, to not have to go through the lookup again, like this. And if you now save the automation, it's now registered. Here you see a webhook subscription created. So it now registered to the event whenever this app is reloaded, then this automation is executed, and all my the positions are all compared to the 15%, and maybe a message is sent to Slack.
And that webhook will show up in the Qlik management console, right? As well.
Yeah. Might only be for tenant admins, sure, but it's there. All right. Let's go on to the last one then. still got 30 minutes, so can go really slow. No. All right. So as Adam said earlier, we have here the last automation is about sending reports. And Adam has created one sheet. Let me see if I can show it. Yeah, there's here one sheet, which is called a weekly report sheet. And it's actually a sheet that contains all this data, but without any user inputs. Because if you want to send a PDF report of your sheet, yeah, a button isn't really doing much there. It's quite useless in a PDF file. So it's then the same data, but made nicely for a report. So again, if I just look at my sheets, I can't see it because it's a hidden sheet, but I'll show you immediately that it is visible inside an automation. So let's again create a new automation.
So I suppose the good thing about that is you can keep the analytics app experience for your users separate from the report experience, right? Because you might have a different screen size or custom width and height in the sheet that's for the PDF report compared to the analytics app.
Yeah, it's a good point. And also, if it has no purpose in showing analytics, then it's just cluttering your overview of sheets. Yeah. All right. So for reporting, we will be using the Qlik reporting connector, which can be used to use the Qlik reporting services. So first, you need to create a report. To create a report block, and it will like trigger the whole process. It's a bit more complicated than the other blocks. So these blocks work a bit together. So first you define for which app you want to create a report. It's again our stock analysis app, of course. You can give it a name if you like, and then you can decide whether you just want to include all the sheets or a custom range of sheets. And now, of course, we want the custom range because we want to add our hidden sheet that was made specifically for this. So then the next block would be to add a sheet to the report. Right, so here we can then do a lookup, and you'll see that here we can also see the hidden sheet, and we can use it to send the report. And then like this, maybe you have a few other sheets you want to add, and just like this, you can build, you can drag these blocks in to add more sheets to the report. And what you can also do is add a few selections. You can either add them globally, so then they are applied to the whole report, or you can add them on the sheet level. One thing you should know about these selections is that they are also unrelated to the selections in the UI, of course, but they are also unrelated to other selections you might have made inside an automation. So this means that for the reporting, there is also another session created than the session used in an automation or the session used in the Qlik Sense UI. Just a side note. And then finally, when you've added all the reports or all the sheets and the selections, you can use a generate report block. And this will like finalize all these blocks you've configured before. And this will make one PDF file available that contains the report. Now you see here that this block, it contains this file icon at the top, which means you can use the output of this block here with our cloud storage connectors. So I think it's copy file. So here you can say I want to copy the file I received from the reporting services to any of these destinations. And that might be a funny use case to make a report available somewhere else. But now for the demo, we won't be sending it to a file storage platform, but we will be using the mail connector.
Emile, it might be just worth mentioning how the selection state works with the reporting connector as opposed to the standard Qlik cloud services connector, right?
What do you mean?
So the selection state is built up inside of the reporting connector, right? So it's not the same as the other blocks when
Yeah,
it's in a separate session.
yeah.
So
So indeed, that's what I said. The reporting service has their own session. You can configure your selections. Let's say you want to add a few selections to the report, to the sheet, and so on. And these are not actually applied when the block is executed, but with all these selections are concatenated in one big JSON together with the definition of your report, the definition of your sheets. Then the selections are added to those definitions, and then it's sent in one go to the reporting services. And then the reporting services uses another session where they compile the report, and then it's returned to you by the generate report block.
yeah, and if you were using other Qlik Cloud Services blocks where you'd made selections in a
Yeah,
state, you could get the current selections from that other state using the get selections block, right? Or get current
yeah,
selections block, right?
yeah. That's actually a very cool use case. So let's first here, when you add the selections to the report, you can search for a field and then one by one at the values. But yeah, that can take some time if you want to apply a lot of selections. If you have to do it all manually, so what you could do is you could go for the Qlik Cloud connector and then search for the select field value block or the select field values by query block. And this block allows you to make multiple selections in one go. See here. Let's say you want to filter by date. I'm not sure if we have a field like by the timestamp, for example. And you could say here, I want to get everything that's older than, and then you see here the examples, or you can send the date format. And then this would apply all possible selections on the max timestamp field for a range of dates. So you could be applying 100 selections, or you could be selecting 100 values for a certain field. Um, and then you can use the list current selections block to get all the definition for all those selections. So we would specify the stock analysis app. Oh, it's not finding it. Yeah, it's limited to, so this lookup is it's limited to 500 apps. So sometimes it's not included, but you can just copy the ID from anywhere, and that will work as well. So this will then return all the selections that were applied here by our query. Which let's say I want to get all stocks from beginning this year until now. And then we get all these selections, and then we want to add those to our report. So we say like this, first we would create a report, then unrelated to the report, we will apply selections in the engine of our app or in the session of our app. And that's here we're actually leveraging the query functionality of the engine and our app to then use it to add selections to the report. Yeah, let's remove this block. And then when that's done, so this will be adding all the selections from our query also to the report, and then it'll be included in the generate report block.
And the reason it's not the selection state isn't shared between those two is because we're using the reporting service API in the back end, right, for the reporting blocks, as opposed to the engine block, engine connection, WebSocket connection.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, again, these reporting blocks are unrelated. They're related because it's also Qlik, but they are using different sessions. Their functionality is unrelated to the other Qlik Cloud blocks.
yeah, and I saw in the chat there's a question about how can a user who is not the owner of an automation run the automation. So that would bring
Well,
us on nicely to our next.
yeah. Let me first get these selections out because that would be a bit too much for the demo now. So we're adding a sheet, yeah, and then we're sending an email. I send it to myself.
So you're sending an email here, but you could also put it into like a SharePoint folder and
Yeah, yeah. Like I've shown earlier with the copy file block, you can actually send it to any place you like. Yeah. Yeah. And then at the email block at the bottom, you can then specify the output of the generate report block. And let's just now run it manually. But
so
in a
you
scenario, you could put this in a schedule where you say, I want to run this every every week or so, when you get a weekly report, or every day, depends on the use case.
and if you do want to send an email, you have to configure your own email SMTP server,
Yeah,
right? With
yeah,
the
yeah.
automation editor.
And here through the connection of the email block, you can add other SMTP connections, and you configure it here. And then if you have multiple, make sure to select the right connection you want to use for. I can't select this one because it's not a good one. But then you need to highlight the one you want to use.
So I suppose, correct me if I'm wrong, Emil, but anyone who has the trigger URL of the automation is going to be able to run the
Yeah,
automation, right?
yeah. And let's get back to the question. So if you want to do it, I think the easiest way or the fastest way to make an automation executable by others is by setting the run mode to triggered. And then here, everyone can actually make an API call to these URLs. So yeah, that's the way you would let an automation be executed by other people, or from other systems. Of course, you can also have the webhooks, but that's limited to these four connectors, because not every platform offers webhook functionality. But what we can also do is, let's leave this to scheduled. What we can also do is, here inside the app or inside the sheet, we can add a button to execute our automation. So if you go to charts, and here the button object, and let's drag that inside. No, don't want to replace that one. Yeah, that's better. Yeah, not showing the title.
So yeah, and then
Here we
so
say generate report. And then under actions and navigation, you can add another action. And of course, we want to execute an automation. And it's this one, stock reporting. And now if this button is clicked, the automation is executed.
and that'll work for any user of the
Yeah, yeah,
application.
yeah. Any user that clicks this now is sending an email to me. So I click the button, and if I'm quick enough, I can show you. Here it's running, and it finished. Right. Now, of course, yeah, with these SMTP servers, if you're doing it, make sure that the SMTP server you're using, if it's the one of your company, there might be some restrictions in regards to how large the files are that you're allowed to send over SMTP. So it's possible, if you're generating this big report, that it's not coming through because there are some restrictions in place. So a tip there is, if you're developing, just maybe use a default Gmail address, without too much restrictions for development purposes.
Or you could put the PDF file in like SharePoint or something and just send a link to
Yeah,
the
yeah, indeed, that's also a good workaround actually. Yeah, yeah. And then generate a URL through SharePoint. All right, here I received my report from the email, and I can open the PDF. And if it ever loads,
So we got another question, Emil. Can you send
yeah,
an email to the user who is clicking rather than you? That could be,
yes,
it should be possible, right?
yeah, yeah. So yeah, here you get the idea, and I received the report. All right. So indeed, I've now hard coded my email address. Yeah, that's not maybe not the too realistic use case, but you could actually expect or here in the button you're working with, and you could include the selections. Um, and then you could select here an email address, then click the button, maybe an email address from a drop down or something, and that will be included in the execution of the automation, and it will be available as an output of the store block.
Yeah. If you wanted to be smart about it, you might be able to do it with section access. If the user's email address is listed as a field value from section access, then you could send the email address through the method Emile just showed, and then send it that
Yeah.
way. That could potentially work. I haven't tested it myself, but it'd be fun to experiment with. Can we get automation app file? So I suppose we can share these automations, right?
Yeah, sure. We'll share them afterwards.
Yeah, we'll
Um,
put links to the automations and just maybe also the QVF file as well.
yeah. I think from last time we didn't share them, so that's maybe a good idea to get those out as well.
Yeah. Anyone got any other questions while Emile and I are available to? No, nothing at the moment.
One thing, if we share the file and you not if when we share the file and you want to import it into an automation, just create a blank one and then right click in the canvas and then you see here upload workspace, and that will allow you to load any file, of course an automation file, into the editor, and then you'll have the automation. And the other way around, you can download an automation as well for sharing them with others.
Yeah. It's probably a good idea to mention as well that at the moment automations are only owned in a private space for
Yeah,
now.
yeah, they are only personal,
But
but
shortly they should be
yeah,
available in the space.
it's on the roadmap.
Yeah, on the roadmap.
Yeah. There's a lot on the roadmap, a lot to look forward to.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining. Hopefully you've got some value from this session. And just to summarize what we've done, we've brought in some external data, the exchange rate data, and set a variable inside a Qlik app. We've created a price alert with some custom data from the Qlik app, and also brought in some external data again as content to help kind of give more background to that. We've done a PDF report and then distributed it via an email, and we've talked around some of the other ways that you could do that. And then Emile's just shown how we can put a button inside of a ClickSense app and run that automation to distribute a report. So hopefully you'll see those are useful in all different contexts, not just for stock alerts, but hopefully in apps you've got in your own environments. I think we will leave it there for now. If you have any questions, please reach out to us or go to the Qlik community. We're happy to help.
Yeah.
So great.
All right. Thanks
Anything else?
everyone. No, nothing from me.
All right. Thanks for joining. Have a